Good afternoon or good evening everyone at this stage. We might just make a start because we have a really exciting evening ahead of us. My name is Aiseen Cassidy and I'm President of the Nursing and Midwifery Board. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome you all here to Technological University of the Shannon, Athlone Campus, TUS. For this, our second of our Nursing and Midwifery Board Summer Series events. I'm delighted to be here tonight so that we can talk with you and hear from you in relation to the General Nursing Division. As I begin, I just want a couple of quick housekeeping matters. First of all, can everyone make sure that their phones are either on silent or put away? And the second one is just to draw your attention to, in the event of an emergency and we have to evacuate the building, every man for themselves. But besides that, the exits are right behind you and there's also an emergency exit here. So form an orderly queue and out we go. So now, so that my comms guy, so Greg doesn't lose the will to live altogether, I'll stick to the script now, Greg. So we would like, first of all, to thank our academic and clinical partners here from TUS and the Regional Health Services for co-hosting this discussion with the Nursing and Midwifery Board this evening. A special word of thanks to Dr. Des Cawley, Head of Department of Nursing and Healthcare at TUS, who has worked tirelessly with the Nursing and Midwifery Board in the past few weeks to put together this evening's excellent programme. It's great to see so many leaders in our profession here, and I am grateful to those who have agreed to moderate the two panel discussions, Eileen and Paul. And also, so firstly to Miss Eileen Whelan, who up until very recently was Chief Director of Nursing and Midwifery and Quality for the Dublin Midlands Hospital Group, up until June of this year, I believe. And this month has just been newly appointed as the National Lead for Vaccination Testing and Tracing. So congratulations, Eileen. And the first session will be co-facilitated by Dr. Mary MacDonald-Naughton. Mary is Senior Lecturer in Nursing in the Department of Nursing and Healthcare here in TUS. And the theme of the first session will be Nursing Leadership in the Midlands, Undergraduate and Beyond. The second session will be chaired by Paul Gallagher, who's the Group Director of Nursing for the Ireland East Hospital Group, and co-facilitated by Dr. Laura Dempsey, Lecturer in Nursing and Programme Coordinator for the Bachelor of Science Honours in General Nursing Programme here in the Department of Nursing and Healthcare in TUS. And the theme of the second session is Evolution of Advanced Practice and Specialist Nursing Roles in the Midlands. We are also joined by senior members of the staff from the Nursing and Midwifery Board, our CEO, Sheila McClelland, and our directors, Caroline Donoghue and Ray Healy, and our Head of Operations, Cathy Ann Barrett. And I know that you've all had an opportunity to speak to some of us over the course of this evening, and we look forward to talking to you more later on. So just a little bit about the summer series. So an obvious question is, why are we doing the summer series? And really, the purpose is to go around the different colleges and speak to the different divisions of the nursing register. At the NMBI, we felt it was time, following the pandemic, to come together in person to discuss with registrants in each of the divisions about your profession and your experience particularly over the last couple of years. Each event is designed, sorry, I don't have COVID. Thank you. Each event is designed to be a discussion about what the key themes are that are facing the professions at this time. So with no further ado, I suppose I'm really looking forward to hearing the discussions this evening, and we'll move swiftly on. So first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Ray Healy, our Director of Registration, to the podium to give a presentation. First of all, I want to play a short video link, which is from Rachel Kenna, our Chief Nurse, who is actually wanted to send a message to us this evening as we start the second summer series. So I'll hand over to Anne-Marie to play the video.
Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to join you virtually at the inaugural NMBI Summer Series. Thank you to the NMBI and the colleges for this initiative. I am acutely aware how important it is for us as professionals to have conversation spaces to explore the professions through the art and science of what we do. Each meeting is going to be designed to have a conversation around a different division of the register, and I have no doubt that you will find them very informative and productive. I am all too aware of the challenges that face the professions at present and into the future. Challenges such as recruitment and retention are highlighted regularly and impact us all. However, the solutions to these challenges often lie within the nursing and midwifery professions. With every challenge, there is an opportunity, and I think the summer series is a great opportunity for all of you as professions across academic, regulation, clinical fields to come together and discuss these challenges before us, examine and deliberate solutions that have yet to be uncovered. You will be able to use this opportunity to probe innovations in practice and explore new ideas and indeed challenges, and challenge our regulator, nurses and midwives, health service and education leadership and policy leaders with your thinking. It's also a great opportunity to shine a spotlight on the individual divisions of the register and support members of each division to showcase what they do and learn from each other. As a registered children's nurse and a registered general nurse, I never get tired of learning about the work with colleagues from all divisions. In fact, we are more integrated than we think. I really look forward to hearing about discussions from around the country. Mental health and wellness in the Northwest, children's nursing in the community in Cork, or in ID as an evolving profession from Sligo, nursing leadership in the Midlands, the evolution of practice for undergraduates and beyond, and future-proofing midwifery through education, practice and leadership in Limerick. I'm really delighted that the fantastic team of project officers working with me in the CNO's office are joining the discussions along with some of the participants of the Nightingale Challenge programme. The policy table is coming to you. Enhancing and supporting the well-being of the professions requires strategies that ensure that there is responsive leadership, a quality clinical environment, manageable workloads and safe staffing. These discussions will inform workforce planning and education in both the undergraduate and graduate settings and support nursing leaders to compassionately lead the professions into the future. Protecting and enhancing the well-being of nurses and midwives will be key for our patients and to building and sustaining our nursing workforce in the years ahead. I hope that you all enjoy these events and embrace this opportunity. Again, this is a fantastic initiative, and in my experience, when you put nurses and midwives in a room, there is always amazing outputs. I have no doubt the summer series will be a huge success and hope that we can build on it into the future.
Once again, our thanks to Rachel for supporting the event, and looking forward to the rest of the evening. So first of all, Dr. Healy, if you'd like to come to the stadium, and you can actually present the data from NMBI.
Thank you, Yassine, for the introduction, and thank you very much for the warm welcome of coming to Athlone. So my name is Ray Healy, and I'm Director of Registration here with the NMBI, and my job is to present the state of the register. So for anyone who doesn't know, all nurses in the country must register in order to practice, and midwives. In 2020, the NMBI undertook a process of digitalising the full register. So the first annual renewal took place from 2020 and 2021, and there was some challenges with the data in that year, but last year's renewal cycle went really well, and so much so we are now very confident that we have a very good picture of the register as it stands. We will be publishing a state of the register later in the summer, so I'm going to give you a highlight of some of the more interesting findings we had, and to give you context of what we're going to be discussing about today. So the first few slides will be on the general register, and then I get to do the actual or GN register as opposed to the general register. Anyway, what we have, so we ran this data on the 1st of June 2022, so this is fresh off the press, it's 2-week-old data, and nobody else has seen it yet. So as of June 1, there was 81,445 nurses and midwives registered with the NMBI. 75,000 of them are currently practicing, and that includes the 4,000 that we put on last year. We're presuming they're practicing since they only joined register, and there are 5,560 who are currently not practicing or identify as not practicing. If you look at 75,000 who are practicing, 66 of them identify as being patient-facing, and 4,900 identify as not patient-facing. That kind of tells us roughly the workforce available in terms of the overall country of what we have for the full register. The gender breakdown, so lucky is me among women, but there are 10% of us now, which is high. 90% of the register is female, and we now have 3 registrants who are not identifying as male or female, which is a new place for us to be, and a probably good place for us to be. But yeah, there's 10% of us, not 10, it's 10% of us hanging in there. We look at the age profile. So this is for the all registrants in terms of the age distribution. So this is a fairly normal age distribution, and actually quite a healthy age distribution. If you look at 34-year-olds at 12,300, that's quite a healthy healthy amount, and that will continue on and probably deteriorate over time as people get older, but it puts us actually quite a normative age distribution. Apart from the 40 to 45-year-olds, it's a bit of a drop off prematurely, but it bounces back up again for 45 to 49-year-olds. I will come back to the first 2 columns because we can see that the upscale escalation is a bit slower than we would like it to be in terms of sustaining the workforce. The 20 to 24-year-olds will increase over time as the students come into it, but the 25 to 29-year-olds is a bit lower in terms of moving on in 5 years. That needs to be a little bit higher, but we'll have a look at that in a second. In terms of the numbers practicing, the number is obviously lower because there's less people identified as practicing, but the distribution is slightly more discrete in terms of the numbers at 45 and 49 have dropped and are kind of more in line with the other distributions. And then in terms of patient facing, it's actually very similar to the distribution over time. So when you look at the full distribution over time, it is a moderately healthy curve, apart from the 40 to 45-year-old, 40 to 44-year-olds is an odd one in the middle. When we look at the number of overseas applications that were submitted by age, and this is where the first 2 columns start to jump back up again. So we are not meeting the numbers required to maintain the system, but we are meeting them with our overseas applicants. So last year there was 5,000 overseas applicants, and the gross majority were under 40, with the majority being 31 to 41-year-olds. And if we put that back into the first 2 columns you just saw, that's where we meet the needs of the country going forward. And this is where the supply of overseas nurses is really now essential. I would love to meet the 66-year-old who came over. There's only one, but they came and they're here. But this is the normative practice now in terms of where our overseas applicants are going to come from and where our workforce is now going to be supplied from. By geographical location, we broke it down to see where people are working. So we didn't break it down to where they live. We can identify where you're working on your ARF. You have to identify the county you're working in. So we can see in the Midlands, and depending on how you define Midlands, there's about 3,700 registrants within the Midlands counties. It could be more or less depending on what you count as Midlands counties, but that's up to, I'm not going to have that fight. I'm from Dublin, and there's more of us. So as you can see, there's 25,000 in Dublin, and that's absolutely fine. There's somehow 8,000 in Cork, which is unusual because that's Cork, but then in the Midlands there's about 3,500. But you can see there are other counties that have very few nurses, registrants who are available, and this is where they're working. So up around the border counties, it kind of drops off quite substantially. And then we do also have registrants who maintain a register and abroad. So there's 2,300 registrants who maintain a register abroad, and they're living in Australia, UK, Canada, US and UAE. So we know they're maintained a register and they know they can work, but they're living abroad. Number of CCPS applications in 2021 to 2022. So a CCPS is your certificate for competency and professional good standing, and that's your travel document if you did want to register in another jurisdiction. It's usually seen as an indication to leave the NMBI or leave Ireland. It is not an absolute indicator of movement, but it's an indicator you would need to apply for if you were to register in another jurisdiction, including if you want to register in UK for Northern Ireland. Obviously 2021 there was less travel, so there's less numbers applying for CCPSs over each month, but we can see already in 2022 there is a fairly big increase, about 200 applications per month looking for a CCPS. So this we'd have to monitor going forward and look at going forward, because this will be an indication of nurses looking to leave Ireland. 200 a month is not huge, but obviously if it bounced up much higher than that, that would be a concern. And we look at the age profile of people who are applying for CCPSs. Unsurprisingly, they are all very young. They're all people who probably want to go to Australia with 900. But what we did find, and we haven't drilled down deeper, but as the applications for CCPSs get older, the nationality of the people looking for CCPS is starting to change. They're not Irish people looking, older Irish people. It is usually people who came from overseas, now want to move on, either go home from where they came from or move on to a different country. And that's a big challenge for the Irish system, because Ireland used to be a destination country for overseas nurses, but now it's not. Now it's on the pathway to somewhere else. So these are kind of the factors we need to look at when we're looking at the overall register. Now I get to talk about general nurses, because I'm a general nurse, and it's the only time I get to do it in the 5 days of the summer series. So I feel among my own, it's fine. So at the end of 2021, so this is not this was not the last 2-week-old data. This is from the end of 2021. We ran the data. So there was, at the end of 2021, there was 68,000 registered general nurses on the register. We added 4,200 new registrants. 900 removed themselves. 2,000 were removed by us. 757 were restored by us, which means a net change to the RGNs of 2,130. So it's not bad. It's an increase. It's more than we need more on. So it's a positive change at least. Looking at the general register, so as of 2 weeks ago, there was 68,040 registered in the total division. 54,000 were currently practicing in division. 10,000 were not practicing, and there was 3,100 new registrants. We can presume they're practicing because they're just new registrants, but we don't capture the information until they go through their first ARF. Of the 47,000 patient-facing roles, again, that will probably be higher if we include the 3,100 new registrants. Again, of the gender breakdown, 43,000 are female and less than 10% now are male. So we're even more unique on that side. And then 2 have preferred not to say. Age profile is actually very similar to the general register. In comparison to other divisions of register, the general register and the general RGN is actually very similar in terms of profile. But again, we can see the first 2 columns are quite slow. The first column we cannot retake because that will bounce up with new grads. But the second column is quite slow because that will need to meet about 10,000 in order to meet the changeover every 5 years. The numbers practicing again is less than what it was, but the distribution is quite normal. Again, we do have about 1,500 who are practicing over the age 65. That's okay. And then the numbers practicing and patient-facing is sustained. Again, we have 1,200 over 65 who are practicing and patient-facing. When we look at the general division over the age profile completely, so we can see again it's a fairly normal distribution. There are decent gaps between registered or practicing and non-practicing, but the practicing patient-facing is fairly close along each time period. We look at the breakdown of geographical location. Again, Dublin wins, and that's okay. With 19,700, Cork is coming up a close, well, not close second, not even close second in Cork. And then in the Midlands, about 3,000 RGNs in the Midlands. So it's a change of about 650 change in the Midlands. Again, depending on what you define the Midlands. Our stated register. So we will be publishing the stated register in the next few weeks. That was just a flavour of some of the data that will be in there. We will hopefully give more information on different parts of the register and the overall register and break it down division by division. So you got to see the general register, but everyone else gets to see their own register first, and then we do the full thing in a few weeks. Is that okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ray. I'm sure there'll be questions and comments on that later on. So now I'd like to invite Dr. Don Fowler. Don is Dean of Faculty of Science and Health here at TUS, and he's also a board member of NMBI. So Don, if you'd like to come up and talk about strategic directions.
Good evening, everyone. You're all very welcome here to what is the Technological University of the Shannon, TUS. We came into existence on the 1st of October last year, so we're coming to the end of our first academic year as a university. And as you can imagine, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of change, it's a lot of excitement. And you know, we kind of see it the 1st of October wasn't an end point, it was the beginning of a journey to become an established university within the technological university sector. So I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of who we are as a university and you know what we do, and just again the context of how the nursing programs fit into the context of the university. So we are a large organisation now, much larger than what the original AIT and LIT was. So just for those of you who don't know, the Limerick Institute of Technology and the Athlone Institute of Technology merged under the terms of the Technological University Act of 2018. So under that act, at least two institutes of technology had to merge. In the case of Dublin, there were 3. In the case of the more recent Atlantic Technological University, there were 3, but we were a duopoly, if you like. So we comprise 2 regions. So earlier on we talked about the Midlands and what defines the Midlands. Well, we're in the Midlands, which typically would be Longford, Westmeath, Offaly, Roscommon, Laois. But then again, it gets a little bit woolly once you go outside of that, and you can get people who would identify with other regions. But we're the Midlands and the Midwest. We comprise 6 campuses: a large campus here in Athlone and another large campus in Limerick City. And then there's some smaller satellite campuses. There's a campus in Clare Street in Limerick City, which houses the Limerick School of Art and Design, which is now also part of TUS. So we got about 15,000, just over 15,000 students between all of the campuses. We've got over 62 nationalities, 250 plus global partners. We graduate between 3,500 and 4,500 students per year. We've got just slightly shy of 1,500 full-time equivalent staff members, and an annual budget of 120 million euro. And within the university, we support an additional 827 jobs. So this slide here shows our campuses, and you might ask, well, why were we called the Technological University of the Shannon? Well, the legendary Shannon pot originates here in County Cavan, and the Shannon then flows all the way to the sea to Limerick. So Athlone is in this location, and the large campus in Limerick is here. So really what connects the two of us, the 2 campuses, is the River Shannon, hence the Technological University of the Shannon. So Athlone and Moylish are the 2 main campuses, and then we've the Limerick School of Art and Design in Clare Street. And then there are satellite campuses in Thurles and Clonmel in Tipperary, and in Ennis in County Clare. The student body that we have, we've got 13,000, currently 13,262 undergrads, just over 1,800 postgrads. We've got over 800 apprentices, 600 plus international students, 400 plus research students. So again, the scale of, once we merged, the scale of our activities increased significantly. We've got courses in arts, in business, in design, in engineering, in humanities, in science and software, in social sciences, and obviously in nursing. And the nursing programs, as obviously you know, are situated here in Athlone and have been since 2002. We pride ourselves in producing industry-ready graduates. Most of our programs have some sort of a placement, either a clinical placement, an industrial placement, but in some sort of a placement where the students get out and work in the real world and get an idea of exactly what that entails. And we find that when they come back from their placement, be it clinical or be it industrial, they are very different people, and they think differently, and they approach their work very differently. And again, we pride ourselves in consulting significantly with industry when we are putting together new programs. So for example, one of our newer programs is an honours degree in pharmacology, which we consulted with the various pharmaceutical companies as to exactly what do you want in a pharmacology graduate. They were able to tell us where the industry is going, and we were able to take that into account and reflect on that when we were designing our modules. So that's the approach that we take by and large, again, so we can keep the industrial partners on board. We operate on the national framework of qualifications, the old semicircle. So we occupy the space here between level 6 higher certificate all the way up to level 10, which is doctoral degree. So you've got the level 7 ordinary degree, level 8 honours degree, level 9 masters, and level 10 PhD. And then within TUS, you can see that our undergraduate cohort is 13,200, postgrad over 400, apprentices over 800, international over 600, and then our postgraduate course students just shy of 1,900. The region that we serve, we are the Midlands and Midwest, so the full title of the organisation is Technological University of the Shannon, Midlands Midwest. We will keep those 2 descriptors in the title for as long as is necessary, but we hope that eventually TUS will become synonymous with the regions that we represent, and we won't have to specify it. So the region we serve comprises about between 850 and 900,000 people. Okay, so it includes the Shannon area, it includes the Atlantic coast, it includes rural areas, for example, around Clare, around Tipperary, various towns, and obviously a major city, which is Limerick. And the composition of our relatively new governing body reflects this regional dimension. So we have representatives from all of the different regions that we serve. And what we like to make sure is that our stakeholders know that we will be, or we hope to be, have a transformative impact on the regions that we serve, the Midlands and the Midwest. And obviously within the TU Act, within legislation, we're duty bound to have this regional remit. So again, it's the technological universities, their remit is the regions in which they are situated. So just to go through the roles of the TU, I mentioned some of them. We're practically oriented. We like to have, we have access pathways from level 6, higher certificate, all the way up to PhD. We like to think we're agile and we can change courses quickly. We offer quite a lot of what are these springboard courses, which are designed for industry to upskill their employees in new technologies and new areas as the economy grows. Practical courses all of the time, professionally and technically skilled graduates. And again, the balance between the theoretical and the practical is something that we strive to maintain at all times. And just to mention one of the newer initiatives that we've been involved in, coincidentally, before the merger between Limerick IT and Athlone IT, both of the Institutes of Technology have become part of what's called a regional university network. So this is a network of universities not in major cities around Europe. So that's one of the stipulations. So for example, you won't see any capital cities here. So we have universities in Hank in Finland, which is about an hour and a half train journey from Helsinki, NHL Stenden in the Netherlands, ourselves in the Midlands and Midwest, and then Hungary, don't ask me to pronounce the name of it, in Austria, Valberg, Portugal, the IP Institute Polytechnique of Cadevo and Ave, and then there's 2 in Portugal, the Polytechnic of Lieira. So we're involved, and there's a lot of initiatives going on there. Particularly, we're looking at joint degrees between the different universities, joint research programs, micro credentials, you know, so 2-3 ECTS type awards, and also student and staff mobility between the different locations. And within the nursing department, we've got a lot of collaborations. Des was in Hank recently with some of the colleagues, and so we've a lot of conversations going on there. So we're very excited about all of that. And internationally, as AIT, we always had a strong international focus. Our previous president, Ciarán O'Cahon, was very ambitious in terms of internationalization and did a lot of work in that area during his time here. So we've an imprint in 105 countries. The plan is to promote the new technological universities to potential students all over the world. And again, one of the features, one of the rationales for becoming a university is the word university has got an international currency. The old saying, if you're explaining, you're losing. So if you're trying to explain to a potential international student what an institute of technology is, you're probably on the back foot. So that the university is understood worldwide. Now, you could say, well, what about Caltech? They don't need to explain themselves, but there are exceptions, obviously. So again, it's a transnational education. We offer or promote internationalization at home, inward mobility, outward mobility, and research. And again, the inward and outward mobility would be in terms of Erasmus programs, for example, and Erasmus mobility schemes. Okay, moving on then to nursing. This Department of Nursing is established 21 years this year. So if you like, we could probably say we're having our 21st birthday this year. We worked out earlier on, myself and Des, that we've probably graduated about 6,000 nurses since 2002, which is a very significant figure for what was a relatively small college in the Midlands. During this academic year, we have 310 undergraduate nursing students enrolled, and we've got 30 postgraduate nursing students undertaking either master's or PhD degrees. We work collaboratively with our HSE colleagues in the Ireland East Hospital Group, the Regional Hospital in Mullingar, the Dublin Midlands Group in Tullamore, Portlaoise, and then area CHO8 area in Longford, Westmeath, and Laois, Offaly. So we enjoy very good relationships with those clinical partners, and we work very well with the local joint working group, which would meet at least 2 times a year, and again just to discuss any operational issues that may arise. The future developments that we're looking at currently is the aligning the internationalization with professional requirements. So we're looking at developing international placements for our undergraduate students, again, but making sure that that alignment is in line with the standards and requirements. Taking into account the report of the expert review body on nursing and midwifery that was published recently, the whole area of graduate entry into general nursing in line with service and professional demands, and also the digitalisation within the health service, again, in terms of meeting the learner demand. And then also keeping in mind the sláinte care demands, making sure graduates are available to meet the realignment of services, so the whole integrated care and community pathways. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the TUS as it is at the moment, and the nursing department. So can I thank you for your attention? Again, just to reiterate on my own behalf and on Des's behalf, you're all very welcome to Athlone this evening, and I hope you have a very enjoyable session. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don, for that. So now I'd like to invite the first panel up to the podium, and this first session, the title is Nursing Leadership in the Midlands, Undergraduate and Beyond, and it'll be chaired by Eileen Whelan. So if you just give us a moment for the panel to come forward, and I know we're just going to adjust the mics.
Good evening, everybody, and again to reiterate and welcome everybody here. I was asked by Des, and I have the pleasure of introducing Eileen Whelan to you. Eileen was the Chief Director of Nursing and Midwifery and Quality in the Dublin Midlands Hospital Group from March 2005 to very recently, when she was appointed as a National Lead for Vaccination, Testing and Tracing. Eileen's background is that she trained as a registered general nurse in Ireland prior to gaining international experience in the UK and Australia. Since her return to Ireland, she has held a number of executive leadership posts in both statutory and voluntary hospitals, including the Mater Hospital and Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda. And she was also the lead for performance improvement, unscheduled care and special delivery unit. She's an MBA graduate of the Michael Smurfit Business School in UCD. Her extensive clinical and leadership track record was evidenced through her work during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think we would all agree with that. She led out in the vaccination programme, but also on prior new service developments in Ireland and the UK, and reconfiguration of services in the North East. She's committed to driving the quality of safety agenda for patients and their families, and to nurses and midwives working as part of the wider multidisciplinary team delivering integrated care for patients. She completed the NHS Education for Scotland Scottish Patient Safety Fellowship Programme in 2013 to 14, and she's leading on the development of a quality improvement culture within the Midlands region and beyond. She was awarded a Florence Nightingale Scholarship in March 2018, and she is also a member of the Regional Health Advisory Group established in 2021. Given this, I don't know how Eileen manages, but she appreciates the importance of fitness, as you can see. She's a keen skier, snowboarder, cyclist and hill walker. She's also a native of Limerick. She's an avid supporter of the reigning All-Ireland Hurling Championships. Compliments of JP, might I add. Eileen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much. I suppose I can say that win was a long time coming, so we boast about it for a little while. But I think Claire are probably going to give us a big run for our money this year. So just to reiterate the President's congratulations, but it's just a real honour to be here today, and it's really lovely to see NMBI leading out in this innovative summer series. And thank you very much to Dr. Des Cawley and to Don for the invitation to be here. It's such a lovely way to spend our evening together. After all, we are human, and this is one of the few opportunities we've had to meet in person over the last 2.5 years. So thank you very much to both NMBI and the Technological University of the Shannon. So I will give my colleagues here to my left an opportunity just to mention who they are, and then we'll go straight into the questions. We're fortunate to have the great opportunity to focus on two topics: nursing leadership and undergraduate and beyond. And really the undergraduates are the lifeblood of our future, and they are the people that are going to be caring for us in our old age. So how we treat our undergraduates is critical. So to my left.
Hi, I'm Lloyd McGree. I'm CNM3 in the emergency department in Portlaoise. New to the Midlands region since January. So yeah, very much enjoying my new role.
Hi, good evening. My name is Catherine Kenny and I'm the Director of Nursing at the Regional Hospital Mullingar.
Hi, I'm Shani Joan. I work at Portlaoise Hospital in surgical ward. I'm really proud to be here.
Hi, I'm Denise Doolan. I'm the Nurse Practice Development Coordinator, Assistant Director of Nursing in the Regional Hospital in Mullingar.
Hello everybody, my name is Tara D. I'm Division Nurse Manager in Tullamore Hospital.
Thank you everybody. So I've got a series of questions here, and my first question to the panel is, given your experience to date, what advice would you now give to yourself, knowing what you know about nursing and about the profession and about midwifery, recognising the changes that have taken place over the last couple of years? So, okay, I'll go to Catherine Kenny first. Thank you, Catherine.
I suppose I have to admit I am trained under the apprenticeship model. So I have come through the whole development of nursing and witnessed it and participated in it. So if I was looking back now, I would say to myself, you know, be open and be flexible, and don't be afraid to take a risk, and most importantly to enjoy it. And I suppose, you know, I was or I am a graduate of St. Vincent's Hospital. It wasn't recognised as a university hospital back in the day, and when I qualified, we were certificate registered nurses. At that time, without revealing the exact year, I suppose the country then was beginning to experience, I suppose, the first signs of recession and difficulties with recruitment, and also difficulties with, you know, retaining staff. And when I graduated, we would have lost a lot of my colleagues, went to Australia. So then I suppose there was a bit of a recovery, and there was the opportunity then for those of us who trained under that model to avail of further education to achieve degree status. So I was very lucky back then. We did the BNS in DCU, and that was a fantastic opportunity. Sorry. Don't know if it's shaking my hand, is it? And that opened my mind, and there's some colleagues here who I would have met on that programme. It gave us a deeper understanding of critical thinking and the ability to translate our knowledge into practice. And then I suppose I had the opportunity then to avail of participating in other CPD and then undertaking my MSc in healthcare management in the RCSI. So I suppose the advice I would give to my looking back is, you know, grab every opportunity. And I suppose really education provides us with opportunities, but it also provides us with the evidence to be able to deliver, I suppose, safe care. And the one thing that hasn't changed since I started way back then, and you know, when we saw the values of nursing being promoted in the publications in recent years,
care was always a value that we had. And I suppose we probably didn't recognise it as a value, but it certainly became more and more evident as my career developed, I suppose, around compassion and understanding, and then obviously developing that commitment. And I suppose in this role now, it's yes, it's a significant responsibility, but I am passionate about care, I'm passionate about commitment, passionate about development and ensuring that we can empower our nurses and our undergraduates who, and Don mentioned it earlier, we have a very good working relationship with TUS. We are fully engaged from the clinical side in relation to exploring new ways of ensuring that our undergraduates, like you said, are valued. We would be lost without them. And it's interesting looking at the slides that Ray showed earlier, but the age group, yes, that we are very concerned about is that young age group who are not staying. And there is really serious issues that we need to address on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Okay, I'm probably just going to keep one question to one panel member, but I'd like to give Denise an opportunity there. Would you like to come in?
I suppose just to say in regard to that, to our new nurses and our undergrads, it's that openness, as Catherine has said. And I suppose if I look at my own career, you know, I was going down an advanced practice avenue and then an opportunity arose for practice development, and my career took an entirely different direction. So I think it's that message to give to our undergraduates, to be open to the different opportunities and the different experiences, to know that there are different avenues within nursing. So just to be open to that.
Lovely. Thanks, Denise. Okay, so keeping on the theme of leadership, so to the panel, how would you define nursing and midwifery leadership? And what are the factors that contribute to your own leadership style? Would anybody? I don't want to land anybody in it, so I'm just watching for a little tweak to see who might like that question. And I think, Shania, I think you might like to take that.
I tried my best to explain that. Yeah. You could hear my heart coming out, maybe. I can see that it's jumping out inside. Anyway, as far as I know, like a leader is not born in a day or two. Like when I started my nursing in 1997, when I started my first year, I was really crying like a baby when I went into the first day went into my patient bedside. Actually, all the thing I could think that, my God, this patient's life is left into my hand. How am I going to manage? That was my first question, and I went back home into my hostel with a heavy heart. The thing I was actually, first of all, I was missing my parents and my siblings, went to a different area of my country to learn nursing, and everything was new to me. Like then, as the day were going and the months were going, I knew that there was a little leader inside me. Like I started taking all the steps. Like there was a wonderful group of teachers to teach us, and used to take the little leadership roles just to get other little nurses, like the juniors, into our own group and teach us how the nursing goes. Then after my training in India, I actually traveled to Saudi Arabia. That was there for 4 years. I was in the endoscopy unit, and the leadership was really totally different what I was thinking because of the culture. I was in culture shock, and the way you care for the patient, everything was totally different. And then as the year goes, I knew that I was a leader there as well. We could manage the patients and the patient's family there, and the real shock was the language there and the slang there. Everything was totally different, but we could manage there and we could lead the people down there actually according to their culture. And then in 2007, I came to NACE Hospital, traveled to Ireland, NACE Hospital. I started my adaptation. I had my 6 weeks adaptation course over there. Then really kind of, I it was a really change from Saudi Arabia experience to our Ireland basically. And everything was very open. We could talk to the patient, we could talk to the families, and we could work with a very good multidisciplinary team. And that really made me really to be a leader, to plan our days, to plan patients' life and plan patients' living conditions and everything basically. Then slowly became a mentor and preceptor for students, and support for adoptees, and also we also used to kind of support the junior doctors as well. So it's actually, as far as I know, nursing is changing and challenging every day, and we go with the challenge, take our roles.
Thanks. And Shani, if you were to name what that was internally that kept you going at this challenging times in the beginning, do you know what it was within yourself?
Like, I wanted to be caring for the patients. I would like to give myself into the patient care. Like I knew that I could do,
Very good.
I could go, yeah.
Thank you. So just following on that theme, many people have moved from frontline clinical nursing and from staff nurse or staff midwife posts and then into a more defined leadership role. Is there anybody that wants to talk about what made you think about changing into the leadership role and what you've done to sustain you in that leadership role? Claire?
I suppose it's a good few years ago that I went into management, and like some of my colleagues here, it might have been a path that I was expecting to go into, but kind of just you're brought there by different times. And when I went into management first, I was very green, I suppose, but you do learn as you go along. And as Catherine said there, it's always about caring. Once you have caring staff to care for your patients, it's that ethos goes through the whole team, and no one can be one nurse on their own. We need that team around them. And I think over the years, sometimes we early on you would tend to look at faults in people, but I think what you really need to do is look at strengths in people. And I think over the years, when you saw strengths in some staff, they're the ones that can see the strength and say, they might, be good leaders, they might be good advanced practice, clinical or specialists, and you work on their strengths and let them see their, let them develop their strengths then, and educate them then. Obviously, it's advanced in education is just amazing, and we have some fantastic staff who put an awful lot into getting, you see, young people go to college and they haven't to worry about, only the nightlife and all the rest, but we have a lot of staff doing postgraduate courses with a lot of family commitments and everything, and it's amazing what they do. I'm always amazed at how much. So I think it's just to try to develop people's strengths and the right people in the right place at the right time, And I just want to say I do a lot of interviews and that, and our international nurses are amazing. We depend so much on them, and I think we really saw it during COVID, how we really needed so many people were challenged beyond belief, and it came through, and they're still coming back to and develop what they learned. We wards turned into intensive cares. People had to do and I was very supportive with the courses we put on, very quick courses for staff to bring them up to a level that they, that was way out of the comfort zone, but patients were really cared for so well, and I just feel look at people's strengths, and don't be looking at weaknesses, try and bring on the strengths. And not everybody is some people are very comfortable there, and we need those. They're fantastic preceptors. Some of the people that don't want to move on to leadership, they don't want to move on to clinical specialist roles, they're fantastic preceptors, and they're going to develop our undergraduates that we need to look after so well, and the scientists that we're looking after all. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. So again, just following on from that theme of undergraduate and postgraduate students, can any of the panel, it's too far back for me to remember, but all you young people, can you remember when you were undergraduates and where you thought you'd end up or what you were thinking about as an undergraduate?
A very different place.
Really?
Yeah, I would have thought I would have remained in clinical nursing, you know, at the bedside. So very much a different place. And I suppose just coming into that, you know, it's that whole leadership piece within that. And I think it's important maybe to acknowledge that every nurse in their own right is a leader, be it, you know, on a shift, be it as a CNM, be it as an ANP or whatever. But certainly, yeah, not where I thought I would end up.
Okay, very good. And Lloyd, you were going to come in there?
Yeah, I suppose it's not somewhere I saw myself going. Mightn't have been somewhere that my first preceptors saw me going.
Yeah.
Graduate program. Yeah. We might as well be honest. But it's something that I suppose you kind of grow and develop into. I suppose John F. Kennedy kind of said, I think the best, that learning and leadership are inseparable. And I suppose my journey to leadership kind of came through education, where I got opportunities that kind of arose unexpectedly somehow. For example, I became an ACLS instructor, which gave me some good clinical skills as I bring back to my workplace, which, you know, sometimes allowed me to lead out in some situations. And I suppose I was very lucky when opportunities arose that kind of stretched me and pulled me out of my comfort zone, because teaching didn't come natural to me. I was very lucky to become a trauma nurse core course instructor, travelling to the UK and mixing with the faculty, I suppose, over there, meeting different people. You know, nursing is fantastic networking. You meet people and you can draw on their experiences, you can draw on their support. I suppose from an emergency nurse point of view, that's been really, really good, because you're meeting some really strong people in that, like Brian Dolan, for example, and Gary Jones. I'll never forget, I was a clinical facilitator. I was trying to introduce an enforced model of nursing in our department at the time. And I was talking about this Jones model of nursing. I was buried in it. And I ended up going kind of semi-unprepared to a TNCC course in England. And I looked up, and the faculty I was teaching with was actually Gary Jones. So he very kindly actually had to come over and he gave a talk to our department on the model of nursing. So yeah, it's not where I thought I'd end up. It's not where I expected to end up, but sometimes these things develop. But just embrace those opportunities and to grasp them with both hands, I think is important.
Very good. So postgraduate education clearly accelerated your journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Anybody else, has postgraduate education brought you to a different place?
I think it does.
Yeah, sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
I think it does. I mean, at any stage, you know, I mean, you can never have enough learning done. And I suppose it just enhances your ability to, I suppose, for me, to participate at a higher level, to engage with strategic planning, I suppose, and now to look at how we're going to, you know, retain our workforce and empower them, and I suppose look after them from a health and well-being perspective, because that is certainly a major challenge right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does.
And Catherine, just out of interest, would you see your postgraduate education as being key, even in your current role at Director of Nursing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, you know, you can't have one without the other. And, you know, sometimes people struggle when they see, I know I you know, with colleagues who would come to me, say, for advice in relation to, should I apply for this job or where should I go? And, you know, you have to have those honest conversations, say, you know, you're not ready for that level. But what I think what you should do now is prepare yourself for it. So it's about encouraging people to take on education. And I suppose I'm mindful too of, I suppose, maybe 30% of the workforce in my hospital who would be, I suppose, you know, older and may not have had the exposure to education and who are afraid of education. So we utilise, you know, we've sent colleagues to TUS, you know, for the short modules, and then supporting them to build on that. And they flourish with that, because then they actually realise, you know, I knew it, but I just needed the theory to actually confirm that I'm delivering safe care.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, and as Denise has mentioned, there's leaders at every level, whether it's at undergraduate or whether it's at staff nurse or even the named leadership posts, but there's leaders at every level. So I'd be keen to know who or what has most influenced your leadership journey.
Sorry. Yeah, actually my first leader was my principal from my nursing college. She was an army nurse, and she actually helped we were 45 students in the college basically, and she was a great leader. She was a model for all of us. She made us, the very first year already she started making us leader in every little role, like we used to have the mess leaders and we used to have the clinical leaders in the college, and she put us in a little kind of, you know, what to say, like, it's not coming out from my mouth actually. Yeah, so then when I traveled to Ireland, Louisa Burke was my, I don't know whether she's here today, she was one of my role model. I think she's a director of nursing in Tullamore Hospital. Yeah, I would like to remember her here today as well. Yeah. So those two are my role models really. And I work with a really wonderful group in Polish Hospital. They're all my leaders and they're all my role models. I have a Fiona Moore here, then Mary Gilligan, and I have all other my seniors, my leaders here. Everyone, each one of them are my role models really, and I'm proud to be working with them.
Okay, so just out of interest, thinking about Louisa Burke or somebody like that that you mentioned, what is it that
she was my CNM too when I started in AIDS Hospital in surgical ward.
And what did she do as
as an adoptee? Actually, she encouraged me every day, like, Shani, you could do it. And the first thing she was doing, like, I gave us one patient to look after. The first week, we had 6 weeks of adaptation in AIDS Hospital. So first week, 1 patient, second week, 2 patients, third week, 3 patients. So I could see my responsibilities were going up every week. And at the end of 6 weeks, I was able to look after my patient, 6 patients, take all those responsibility into my shoulder with the help of other multidisciplinary team. It was a great opportunity to have my adaptation to be done. Then I worked there for 12 years. Yeah.
Thanks, Shannon. Thank you. So far, everybody's making the leadership role sound like it's very easy and it's something that people take up quite willingly. So I'd be interested in hearing, what are the challenging elements of being a leader? Things that maybe haven't gone so well. Do you want to give us some insights, Catherine?
I won't say anything to that at all. No, I suppose it's a difficult question, but it's a very real question. And I suppose for me, if I reflect on the last 2 years in particular, I would say the difficulty was that we were, like everybody, responding to the unknown, and it was, being thrown into a very significant, critical kind of leadership role within Mullingar as, the COVID lead, looking at being the chair of the COVID governance committee. So you were the person that people were dependent on for continuous, up-to-date, current information. And that was really, really pressing because we did not know what was happening from day to day. I suppose during those times, I have to say, one of the inspirational leaders that guided me through many very dark nights, particularly in the early weeks, when we were having late meetings like every other hospital at weekends. And I have to say, Dr. Mike Ryan from Sligo, who's the Executive Director of the World Health Organization. And I have, somebody gave me a gift of words that I used on a regular basis at all of those meetings. You have to chase the virus, you can't wait, speed trumps perfection. If you hesitate and if you're afraid to make a mistake, you'll fail. And so, not to be afraid to make a decision. It's the right decision you make at that time. And sometimes those decisions are really difficult. We won't go into all the details around them, but they were really difficult. And for a leader, it was very lonely. and very isolating. So I suppose, you know, I learned a lot about myself, particularly between March and May of 2020. And I suppose the key thing was, you know, it's about pacing yourself. You know, I see Alva down there, I'm a runner as well. And, you know, so I would think, you know, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So it was all around pacing myself. But also the important thing, which I suppose, if we're honest, nurses sometimes aren't very good at self-care. So I suppose somebody else who I read a lot and listen a lot to is Professor Michael West. I just find his words very powerful. They're simple, but around being a compassionate collective leader. And I suppose that's what I think we achieved, or I achieved for myself when I look back on the last 2 years. What I suppose critical for me was about building my own self-awareness, self-regulation, and being able to build, I suppose, the capacity for resilience. And that was really difficult. But you do have to kind of, you know, go out for the run when you're not able to go for the run. Or I do a lot of swimming, so jump into that pool, even when you don't feel like it, because you do need to be able to recover and come back and face it. So yeah, so for me, I suppose, yeah, and I would have to say, you know, you can't do it without the support of your peers, and you can't do it without the support of people that you can pick up the phone and ask for help or ask for advice. So yes, I would have picked up the phone and phoned Paul on different occasions when I was with my back to the wall and wondering, you know, what do I do? But I suppose the values come back. It's about care, compassion, commitment, and also having the courage to make those difficult decisions when you have to make them. So I suppose, you know, the people that I lead are unaware of the complexity of what was going on, you know, for me as the leader. But I suppose I just hope that I demonstrated consistency, empathy, humility. You know, being able to say, you know, I don't get it right all of the time, but I need to ask the right person the question. And sometimes there was not a right answer to those questions. So I'm not sure whether that answered.
Catherine, that more than answered. And I suppose what's really nice is you can hear the empathy in your story. Thanks, Catherine. I was going to say, we can really hear the empathy in your voice as you recount that story. And, you know, what's really incredible is, you know, you were brave and you made the decisions that needed to be made, but also that you brought people with you. So compliments to you. And it was really difficult for many, many staff across the system, but it was really difficult in all of the leadership roles. So that's great, Catherine. Well done. I think we're going to give this one a little. Desi, do you want to introduce? Yeah.
I just think Professor Michael West, as you mentioned, Catherine, is absolutely. We actually spoke about him the other day in relation to philosophy being here, and I think you deserve, I know all of you do, a round of applause for leading Mullingar General Hospital during the COVID, if I may say so. Thank you. First of all, thank you. First group out, but I have a great question to ask. All agree that there was a nurse tutor here. It's probably a good verification for the education programme in nursing in Ireland through the years, whether it be apprenticeship model like a lot, or as we move to the degree process. You know, it really is the skill of the team and the people who mould and shape us that makes us all the nurses that we are today. So just to comment on that. And I suppose, Catherine, just to comment to yourself, I know we had a conversation beforehand, and yeah, I would echo that,
being a leader or being a director of grade is a very lonely station, but really at the core of it is, as you said, keeping your staff safe, holding values, holding high quality, and ensuring that the patient's needs are met in a caring and compassionate way. So thank you for that. And Shalini, what can I say? Fantastic to hear a bright voice from one of our international nursing colleagues, and to hear your journey to Ireland and how you have become embedded in the team here. So well done to everyone. See you again.
Yeah.
Hi, Carolyn here from NMBI. I have a question for the panel. Kind of thinking of the future now, and leadership perspective, especially from your example, how important it is to have that leadership thought, that drive. So we're looking at the undergraduate program now over the next year, and kind of curriculum and how we teach the future students. Any examples or any thoughts as to how do you teach? Like, is there anything you can think of way we could approach that?
It's like, yeah, I would say like encourage them to spread the positivity, go with the challenges, and keep their morale.
I suppose, Carolyn, just want to mention, I suppose, we did the board, the NMBI did add in, the additional competency around leadership, and we discussed this, some of us, a little while ago. But it is one of the competencies on the undergraduate programme. But I think what we need to do as, I suppose, leaders and educators and facilitators is actually encourage it in a more positive way. And I think we need to be creative and innovative in how we encourage these amazing people who come into healthcare for a reason. It's around care and compassion, and they're there for the same reason. But I think we need to enable them to take on leadership. We've had amazing undergraduates. We witnessed their leadership during COVID. We witnessed them taking things on that we wouldn't have wished them to take on at that time. But they did demonstrate leadership in the clinical setting. Yeah. We would have been lost without them. And I suppose what we did do right during that time was we supported them. We put a lot of work into supporting them, ensuring that they were well supported. Some of them wanted to, we wanted to push the boundaries, but actually we had to keep that under control. But I do think we need to be innovative going forward, because we don't want to lose the motivation and the enthusiasm that they had during that period. And they found that difficult when they came back in to their supernumerary placements and even into internship. So while, yes, they may have lost a little bit in relation to clinical practice, they had gained a wealth in relation to their emotional intelligence, their interpersonal skills, and their leadership skills. So I do think we need to be a bit more innovative and exciting around leadership for undergrads.
I might just come in there as well. I just think probably as well in regard to our clinical placements, there's probably a greater emphasis that we can place on with the students while they're on placement. I mean, I trained in the same establishment as Catherine, and I can remember back to, just prior to qualification, going on to the ward one day and being handed the ward book by the C&M. You're in charge today, the ward sister at the time. And I think maybe that's something that possibly, certainly for our interns, we probably need to start being a little bit more creative around their internship placements, and perhaps there's something that we can do at that stage around fostering the practical application of leadership within that setting. And I suppose, sometimes, they see management and it's maybe about bringing home, the marrying of leadership and management together. And I suppose you manage, you lead through management, or you manage through leadership. And I think it's maybe focusing in on that, particularly at that internship phase.
Yeah, I would agree with what you've said, Denise. And again, I suppose I'm a graduate, not of last year, that whole concept that you were given the keys and just get it. And sometimes, we certainly need to nurture our students, and I think everybody has alluded to that, and that's very important. We need to educate them, but but we need to ensure that they are fit for purpose, and that's the secret, you know, so therefore that they can command the ship we need it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Caroline, for your question initially. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm myself, I'm an advanced nurse practitioner in Tullamore Hospital for older persons, and my career wouldn't be unlike yours in the apprentice model and all the rest. But I think, and I did a long stint as a CNM2 as well, and I think that was probably one of the most difficult roles I ever experienced. And I think it's a role that we really need to work on in the health service. It's a time in your career maybe when you're ready for a bit of leadership and you've gone that way, but then it becomes so difficult. It could nearly drive you right out of your side of it, and you don't want anything to do with it anymore. So I think, I'm not sure how to do that, but I think there's something about empowering that role a little bit. But it's a very important role in a department, in a ward setting, even for students, for creating an educational environment. Everything like that. It's just a role that we need to work on big time to keep those people, because we are losing them all the time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I suppose the expert review, you know, does pick out the CNM2 role. And I suppose what we witnessed, and we still witness, is they're very difficult positions to fill. And you know, the reason why is because of the complexity of the role, and I remember being a CNM2. And very, very difficult role, because you're kind of the meat and sandwich, aren't you? You know, you're the link between the clinical area and middle management, and no matter what goes wrong, Alice, it lands on your step. So I do think, like, and I think I'm really showing my age now. So, but I think if we look back at the famous Blue Book in 1998, and I suppose I was full of, you know, hope and enthusiasm at that stage, and that's when my career changed. Kind of thought, oh my gosh, I could go into clinical leadership and make a difference. But then, you know, all the external things happened, all those political influences, the financial crashes. So it absolutely wiped out the role of the CNM2, in my opinion, because when we went through all of the moratoriums, what happened? The first jobs, well, in my hospital that were lost were the CNM1 roles, which were the clinical, you know, implementers in the clinical setting. CNM2, then everything fell back on the CNM2. So I do agree that role definitely needs to be protected and developed more. You know, I think anybody here would agree. You know, I mean, and during COVID, like, we would have been lost. Everybody, we were lost without everybody. But the CNM2s certainly became very agile and very flexible, and they were organising rosters. Like, I mean, CNM2 in our ICU, same as in every other ICU, they were, at one stage we had a complex roster to manage 3 intensive care units, Teams A, Teams B and Team C, and then bringing in CNSs and then doing these rapid education programmes. So I think we do need to recognise the role of the CNM2 and celebrate it. But I don't know how NMBI can help us with that, but I do think so. I do think we do have, I suppose, you know, one of the last things I listened to, Michael West, you know, chinks of light and hope. You know, there is light and hope there for the nursing profession. We do have the ONMSD, we do have the NCLC, we do have nursing well represented at a political, you know, at that level. And I think for us, for me, I need to keep knocking on the door, you know, and having that engagement within the group, and then whatever Paul can do for us after that. But, you know, I do think the CNM2 role is critical, and we need to do something faster. We're going to lose more people.
I suppose just one more comment in relation to that, and we talked yesterday about it around coaching and mentorship.
Yes.
So of our, you know, of our leaders, of our potential leaders, it's that whole piece, I suppose, about future-proofing and succession planning, and, you know, identifying people who are going to be key leaders and starting to coach and mentor them into those positions. And I suppose, reflecting on my own career pathway, I can look back to where, you know, I would have engaged. I see some of them sitting here in the audience from the practice development perspective, but certainly, you know, mentors that would have coached me through developing my leadership competencies. So I think that's an invaluable piece of work as well.
I think both of you have highlighted the importance of support and the whole concept of helping people. And that also comes with confidence. And confidence comes through education as well.
Yeah.
So it's a circle.
Yeah.
No one is on their own. And I think it's very important that we kind of link in, you know, close that circle off. So as Catherine has quite rightly said, that we do not lose any more CNM2s.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, if I may thank Eileen most sincerely, to thank each and every member of the panel. I think they've had an excellent discussion. And I also recognise that you're probably all down for a little glass of water or a quick cup of coffee. You can have it and come back in. We won't delay, but I think you all would like to just eat for a moment.
Everyone's had a couple of minutes to get some refreshments and stretch the legs. Might ask just the last thing that you hear, you might close the door up there. Great. And I will just hand over now to Dr. Laura Dempsey. She's just giving a short introduction for the second panel, and we will take it away there, Laura. So welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the second panel discussion this evening, the title of which is The Evolution of Advanced Practice and Specialist Nursing Role in the Midlands. So I have the great pleasure of introducing the chair of this panel, who is Professor Paul Gallagher. So Paul is a registered psychiatric and general nurse and holds qualifications in critical care nursing, and has a great deal of experience both clinically and managerially in the intensive care setting in Dublin and in North America. Paul was appointed as the Chief Director of Nursing Midwifery to the Ireland East Hospital Group in May 2018. He is professional lead for over 5,000 nurses and midwives across the group, a role that requires great strategic and operational engagement with 14 different directors of nursing midwifery. So prior to this current appointment, Paul joined the corporate management team of St James's Hospital in Dublin as Director of Nursing in August 2006. Paul has a strong interest in supporting clinical research and worked very closely with academic colleagues in the School of Nursing Midwifery in Trinity College in Dublin to increase the profile of nursing research throughout the hospital. Between April 2013 and December 2015, Paul was nominated by the Minister for Health to represent Directors of Nursing Midwifery on the board of the Nursing Midwifery Board of Ireland. Paul was immediately elected President of the board, and in his role, he and his fellow board members were responsible for overseeing the introduction of the Nurses and Midwives Act of 2011. So in acknowledgement of Paul's contribution towards the professions of nursing and midwifery, the School of Nursing Midwifery in Trinity College Dublin awarded Paul the title of Adjunct Associate Professor. That was in June 2014. The year after, February 15, Paul was awarded an honorary fellowship from the Faculty of Nursing Midwifery from the RCSI in Dublin. And then in 2019, the School of Nursing and Midwifery in Health Sciences in UCD awarded Paul the title of Adjunct Professor. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Paul here this evening.
Thank you very much. You're very disobedient. I asked you not to go into all of that, but anyway, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, Gormaida. Advanced practice is something that's near and dear to my heart, I'm sure to Eileen's and to many of you as well. And I'm looking forward to the discussion that we'll have over the next 25 minutes or so. And so I'm going to get the ball rolling, and I'm going to ask, first of all, before we ask the question, should I say, I'm going to ask everybody to introduce yourselves. So over to yourself. I'm
Yvonne McCaig. I'm Advanced Nurse Practitioner in ED in Mullingar.
I'm Marie Healy. I'm a candidate Advanced Nurse Practitioner in Tissue Viability in Tullamore Hospital.
I'm Tricia Clancy. I work in Portage Hospital. I'm the Respiratory Adult CNS.
Hi, I'm Regina Healy, Clinical Nurse Specialist Diabetes in Portage.
Hello, I'm Lisa Kerr. I'm a lecturer in nursing studies here at TUS, and I'm delighted to be here. It's great to see you all and to be here in person.
So to get the ball rolling, you know, recruitment and retention is a big issue. We've kind of touched on some of that already, but from an advanced practice perspective, I'm going to ask Marie Healy to get the ball rolling. How, Marie, can nurses expand their roles of competency and practice without being seen as just filling the gaps within the system, but having an advanced practice role? So how do we bridge that gap?
Okay, I suppose from an advanced practice, so I suppose it's twofold, and I suppose it is about recruitment and retention, I suppose, as well. I suppose that starts at an undergraduate, and I suppose when we come into nursing initially, I suppose it's being able to recognise one's potential, I suppose, and for our, I suppose, our managers and our practice development, I suppose, to build on one's, I suppose, potentials, even as I suppose, a junior nurse, and maybe to afford them an opportunity maybe in another area that they may very well be good and I suppose have potential. I suppose from an advanced practice, it's very important that we don't, I suppose, fill a gap, that we're not filling the gap of another profession, I suppose. So we need to define our role as advanced nurse practitioners. I suppose that has to be done, I suppose, in collaboration with our nursing directors of nursing, I suppose, our governance structure as well, whoever our medical governance is. I suppose it's getting a job description, a specific job description, I suppose, identifying the cohort of patients that you're going to look after, I suppose, to make, I suppose, an impact in quality service, I suppose, good for the patient. I suppose all the reports have shown that advanced practice has a positive impact for patient care, and I suppose delivering that, I suppose, in the right place and the right time. I suppose with the, I suppose, a nursing ethos behind it, you know what I mean, care and compassion and commitment, I suppose, is very important.
Very important. So if I could ask Patricia Clancy to give us your views in that regard.
Yes, well, as an the ANP would be more kind of an autonomous, working autonomously, but as a CNS, and I keep saying I'm new, but I suppose I'm a year and a half more in the role, and it's constantly just learning, you know, developing my role. You know, there's a vision there that you see where you want your service to be, and it's not to fill a gap, you know, it's to improve patient care at the end of the day. And I mean, we've all seen the importance of, you know, nurse-led clinics. The clinics are vital to the hospital service for patients. You know, it reduces the waiting times, and I think we're promoting what the difference we make to the service, and to kind of, you know, we need to promote that and show how we can make a huge difference, and that, you know, we do reduce the working load for a lot of, you know, for the medical team that are, you know, working hard, and they have their huge workload. So, you know, we're just going to hopefully make a difference, and at the end of the day, it's to improve the patient care.
Exactly.
You know.
So it's making the difference is the key point, and we might touch on some of the quality side of things later on in the course of the conversation. But I'm going to go to Yvonne next. And Yvonne, you're a registered advanced nurse practitioner in Mullingar, and we have, I suppose, it's getting back to making a difference across the organisation and indeed the service that you provide. So how does that look to you, or how do you make that difference, and how do you measure it, perhaps?
Well, I suppose the benefit of the ANP role has been demonstrated in numerous studies, not only in the provision of the care that we provide that is based on is high quality, is evidence-based, but also that holistic care is embedded in our philosophy of care. I was here in this room a few months ago talking to the fourth year nursing students, and at the end of the talk, one of the students asked me, so what's the difference between your role and the doctor's role? I said, it's a huge difference. I said, here's an example. And I like talking about giving examples. A few months ago, I was looking after this little old lady, and she left the department so happy, not only because I assessed her, I diagnosed her, I treated her, but also because I referred her to the public health nurses. I got the podiatrist to come and look after her feet. I ensured that the frailty team were going to provide home care. So very, very happy. So not only that we provide holistic care, we also have great communication skills. This was one of the things that was demonstrated in the early days, back in 2005, when the National Council for Nursing and Midwifery published this report, preliminary evaluation of the role of the ANPs, that demonstrated communication skills were excellent among ANPs, not only with patients, but also with the multidisciplinary team. We have great communication. One of the examples is we have great communication or great relationship with the Tullamore orthopedic team. They set up this new virtual fracture clinic. So we're able to provide care for people presenting with orthopedic, and it's saving them traveling to Tullamore, and we're able to provide care virtually, and we can follow them up locally, and that saves them the travel, especially for older people who have to travel long distance to go to Tullamore just to be told the same thing that
you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, well done. And So that's from the registered advanced nursing practitioner perspective. From the Regina, from the CNS perspective, that same question around, you know, making a difference both within your organisation or even impacting elsewhere outside of the organisation. How can you demonstrate that?
I suppose from a clinical nurse specialist point of view, I suppose it's been given the opportunity to showcase yourself. And I'm very lucky in Fort Laois Hospital. My management are very supportive in anything that I do, and they've all supported and tried to facilitate it within reason. There is limitations to everything, but I suppose if you're doing certain things that you do them well, I suppose an example of that would be just for the Midlands group. So that would be for Tullamore, Port Laois and Mullingar. So recently, we were given the opportunity about 2.5 years ago. We meet as a group of CNSs and ANPs just for the diabetes. So we decided that we would come up with something that we would try and change something within our service. So then last week, after about 2.5 years of really long, hard work, we launched the end of life guidelines. So we're hoping now the clinical lead for diabetes is hoping to take those and launch them as a national guideline. So that's kind of to show the progress that we're making as a group of diabetes nurses and ANPs. So it kind of proves our worth, really.
Good, well done, very good. So we're all aware that, like our Minister for Health has I know I've spoken to Rachel Kenna, as I'm sure Asin and Sheila have in times gone by, around the aspirations that our Minister has in terms of advanced practice. And, you know, to be fair to him, he has really upped the ante in terms of the numbers of advanced practitioners he wants in the system. And I know, having spoken to Rachel, the chief nurse, ideally he's looking for 10% of the nursing workforce to get advanced practice, and that sounds fantastic. But there's a bit about taking it incrementally. And we've had a recent allocation of advanced practitioners, or new posts coming into the system, all 149 that will be processed at double quick time over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks. So my next question is to Lisa. Lisa, as our academic on the panel, this whole thing about advanced practice and increasing the workload or increasing the numbers within the advanced practice population, what really do you think does that mean in terms of the impact on the Midlands, or how, really what does it look like, and perhaps how can we demonstrate the success of these posts?
Thank you. I think that's a really good question, and I think, as you said, the focus very much from a policy directive is to increase, because I think that the values of the CNSs, of the ANPs, is being recognised and is increasingly recognised in relation to the provision of timely evidence-based care. I think from the 2019 graduate to advanced practice streamlined approach that is trying to provide nurses with that clinical career pathway, which I think is really important, because when we've spoken about retention and recruitment, you know, it's about giving those opportunities, and it's about making those opportunities available to as many nurses who seek to go that pathway. It's not that that's the pathway for everybody, but it is to make it available. And so I suppose then the fact that there are increased courses available, there are increased courses in relation to both prescribing medicinal products and ionizing radiation. You know, making all of those available will make, I suppose, the Minister's 10% hopefully a real reality in practice.
And just the whole thing about measurement of success, and I know anybody at advanced practice level, whether you're an ANP or a CNS, you know, me in my role, I'm always looking for measures of success. And from a college university perspective, how can you guys support that process? And I might ask maybe any of my colleagues just to talk about that level of measurement and how it impacts on your work.
Am I okay?
Yes, please do.
I suppose one of my roles, and this is one of my I have lots of roles, but this is one of the ones that I'm very invested in, is the linking in with our clinical partners and the promotion of that evidence-based practice. Just for example, both in terms of the Island East group and also within Dublin Midlands group, you know, we've been engaging with our clinical colleagues to promote research to promote the, with clinical practitioners, to develop both the I suppose the outputs in relation to research, but also publications, so that advancements then in terms of nursing can be realised, and nursing practice in relation to both general nursing and the more wider other disciplines.
Good.
As well.
Well, I know you've touched on research, and we will come back to that. But I might just ask my colleagues, just anybody who wants to comment on, measuring the value of your job, or if, say, for example, Yvonne had to meet Catherine and just demonstrating the success of your job. How do you measure that? What does success look like? Anybody want to take that?
Well, I suppose it's not something that's easily measured. I know there was a publication not so long ago on the benefits of the advanced nurse practitioner roles. I'm not sure if there was the one done recently, but I think the success of our role is probably demonstrated on a daily basis on what we do every day. That's one of the most satisfying part of my job. I go in the morning, and the first thing people say to me is not good morning, it's so glad you're here. So glad to see you. Thank God you're here. That's what I hear every morning. Every morning I go in the door, and that's what I hear. And I think that is a demonstration of how effective our job is.
But I suppose on a measurement, if we're going to measure things, I suppose KPIs, I suppose, and setting them, I suppose, and setting them realistically, I suppose, as well, you know what I mean, so that it does, I suppose, capture the work that has been done. I suppose auditing as well, and like that, working with our partners to maybe, because lots of AMPs and CNSs are doing lots of research, and I suppose it isn't always, you don't always be afforded the opportunity maybe to showcase it at different conferences, stuff like that. I suppose it's important to get out there and to be able to see the good work that's been done by loads of good people,
Regina, were you going to come in there?
I was just going to say, like, patient satisfaction, that's probably one of the big things, that they leave your office and they're happy with their care, and they know that it's an open door, that they can come back to you, and 99% of the time they do come back,
Indeed. And it's not rocket science at the end of the day, but it's the practical demonstration, which I think is
simple
absolutely
things, like in my role in respiratory care, it might seem like a very simple thing, but just going through inhaler techniques, and the amount of patients I've gone through is with them, and they go, I am on that inhaler 20 years and I've never been shown how to use it, and or like that when you go in, you go, oh, I've been waiting for you. It's like, oh, okay, and you know that you're making a difference to the patient, because sometimes these little things can be left aside because there might be more critical incidents for the patient, but the little things like that can be vital too, So.
I think what's key here is that our own peers are delighted to see you coming onto the ward. It's not like in the olden days when infection control used to walk on the ward. We used to run through the hills. But I'm going to stay with Regina for my next question. Regina, it's great at this level, but our young staff out there, Catherine has talked about the difficulties that our own students have been through during the pandemic, and it's been quite spectacular, the response that they have put into the system. But how do we engage our staff nurses really to progress and encourage them to progress into these specialist roles? There's sometimes a reluctance, there's sometimes a little requirement to give somebody a little gentle push or a nudge. But what do you think we need to do? Are we missing a trick here, or what's the key message there?
Well, I suppose I would have been one of those staff nurses back in the day, and I would have got that gentle nudge from Claire O'D, a gentle shove. So I suppose when Claire did that sparked my kind of, oh God, maybe I can. Somebody has a bit of confidence in me, and it is confidence that somebody mentioned earlier on. Like when you're newly qualified and you're kind of trying to find your feet. For the first couple of years, because it just doesn't come, like, you do your training, but really you learn most of your trade kind of when you're on the floor. So I suppose after a few years, you don't really think about, when you do your nursing at the very beginning, you don't really think about, oh, I'm going to be an AMP or whatever. You might have one or two people who do that, but most people are trying to just get through their training. And then you start working and you're enjoying yourself and whatever. And then it takes somebody like Claire to come along and to give you that little kind of, I suppose, to set the seed kind of, and that's kind of what happened for me. And I'd like to think, now that I'm in this position that I'm in now, that for the staff that I meet along the way, that I'm trying to encourage them, act as a role model, trying to kind of, I suppose, be a leader for them, and I suppose bring them along the journey, and to show them that diabetes is interesting, and that when I go to the wards, I just don't go to the patient. I try and bring whoever's with me or whoever's available, and to try and teach them. I'd say they're probably sick of me because they're like, "Come around, I show you this," and you know. So just to try and get them engaged in it, and to say, you know, to support them. And there's several nurses, I suppose, but if I hear any more people that want to do palliative care, I'm going to go mad. Everybody wants to be a palliative care nurse. So I'm trying to, I spent my last 2 years in Portleash because my colleague was going to retire, and I knew she was retiring, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be on my own. So I spent 2 years trying to hound every nurse in the place. So they all know all about diabetes. But eventually we got staff to actually do the course. So they're currently doing it now, and I'd like to think that I'm helping them doing it. I'm a facilitator, a mentor for one of them. One girl had just completed it. She did an online course there a few weeks ago, so she's just finished her HDEP, and she's taken up a CNS position for the midwifery. So we all kind of helped her in our group, helped her along the way. But I think it's to try and let them know that what pathways are available, and sometimes when they're students, they qualify, but they don't know what else is available to them. So it's just to kind of open up the door.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's not rocket science, but you know, you mentioned about Claire, and you know, it's all about creating a legacy for nursing, and this is what the future of nursing is going to be about, I think. And even from that point, with regard to engagement with students, Lisa, you know, how do you do that at college level or at university level?
No, absolutely. I think it's so important, and it's that, you know, so that the students can realise there are these different options and these exciting opportunities, and that they become, I suppose, aware of them, and then maybe the thought process is that they may choose to go that clinical career pathway. Just for example, Yvonne mentioned earlier, she came in with a brilliant presentation. Our students evaluated it great on the role of nurse prescribing, and in relation to both medicinal prescribing and ionizing radiation. And you could see the buzz around them afterwards. You know, they really enjoyed it, because they thought, oh yeah, you know, we're a nurse, we can do these things, and this is an option for me. And I know some of the students in the past have gone on and are now working as advanced nurse practitioners and clinical nurse specialists, both in the Midlands but also internationally as well.
Good. Okay, we've mentioned research a number of times, and I suppose sometimes we can be challenged about that whole research agenda for our advanced nurse and midwifery practitioners, and how they demonstrate research in the midst of Yvonne walking onto the ward and been pulled hither, thither and yon, but I suppose it's a really important function. So maybe Yvonne, I'll start off with you in terms of incorporating that into your workload. Is it a reality, or how difficult is it?
It has been very, very challenging, even from the beginning, because starting off on my journey as an A&P, I was so focused on establishing my clinical practice. But always at the back of my mind, I knew that was one of the core concepts. We had to carry out research. So as much as possible, try. I have to say, in the last 10 years, I've been so busy helping my colleagues with their research that I haven't actually done my own research. But I would consider that as part of the process of learning about research, because research on its own has moved on from the traditional quantitative, qualitative, and now it's all gone into the systematic reviews and all that. So that was a good learning process for me as well. And also, as part of the emergency medicine program, I'm part of the A&P Forum Committee, and within that committee itself, we have this focus on trying to establish a research committee, we were saying that we need to link in with the third level education. It's not an easy process, but we are getting there. But I am fortunate enough to be invited by Dr. Descawley here to be part of their research, and I'm going to get Lisa to talk about that.
Good. Well, now that Lisa has been mentioned again, no pressure, but I suppose my experience is that whole academic partnership is absolutely key. And I was speaking to Paul from the RCSI earlier during the break, and you know, that whole partnership with academia is absolutely essential, because our clinicians are so busy at the coalface. So the challenge then to our colleagues in the university side of things, how do you enable it, how do you support it, and how does it practically done?
I agree with you absolutely, Paul. I think it's key. I think it's really important, and I think that partnership is developing and will carry on and develop. And I think part of it, I suppose, is linking in with our clinical partners and seeing, you know, maybe first of all identifying, is there a particular area of research that is required or is needed for the different clinical areas. And then I suppose it's like that. It's having a forum whereby we can meet and match and progress, because like you were saying, some of the difficulties and the demands of the clinical areas can take over, and I understand absolutely why that is. But if that partnership happens, you know, hopefully the impetus then can be kept, you know, and developed and promoted, and have that, I suppose, the production of that evidence base, which is so central to all of our nursing practice.
Well, I'm going to ask a question that isn't on my list, and it's probably something that I have a personal interest in. I'm doing a piece of research with a colleague in UCD at the moment, and we're working in partnership with colleagues in Australia, and it's all about integration of the role of the advanced practitioner, irrespective of whether it's a nurse or a midwife. Now, it's not introduction of the role, it's integration of the role. How the advanced practitioner integrates within the organisation, and what supports are needed for them. And our first phase of our study was, we did a survey of all our advanced practitioners. They were invited to participate, and they gave us their views. Now we're doing phase 2, which is looking at the views of assistant director grades and above. And so I'm getting a sense of what's needed, but from the point of view of your experience of integration, I'm just going to throw it open to you all there. What works and what needs to change to make integrating your roles in your organisations better, or what makes it strong? Is that a loaded question?
Well, I have to say, when I was working on getting the site accreditation, this was way back in 10 years ago. That was at the initial stages where you had to get, it was a 2-part process where you had to get site accreditation and the professional accreditation. And the framework that was published by the NMBI at that time, I have to say, it was my Bible, because everything that was laid out in there, it wasn't just a guide for me, but it was also for a guide for the management. It was to tell us that this and this needs to be done in order for an ANP to be established in a hospital that will be working as part of the multidisciplinary team. So I found that process really, really useful. The challenge there was to secure the time to carry out this site accreditation, because there was a lot of work that needed to go into it. Also to get the time to, or to get the support, not from management, I have to say, it was more from local level. But those challenges, they were met. So, yeah.
And I think they're still ongoing to a certain degree. Any other comments there about that, how your roles integrate locally, and what needs to be done, or what works very, very well?
To be honest, I think you need a lot of support from your medical colleagues as well. In Portlaoise now, unfortunately, we don't have a respiratory consultant. We have our governance, who's excellent and has a huge interest in respiratory care, but I suppose it might be easier if we had that guidance there to help us, you know, deliver our vision of where we want to go with our service, and to kind of advance respiratory care, you know, and it can be difficult without that support sometimes. We have very good support from management and that, and it's developing, but it does. I mean, it takes time, but
yeah,
there has to be that work.
You know, it's interesting, Patricia, you mentioned about the dependence to a certain degree on your consultant leads, and there is clearly a medical or a requirement to have that support, but what does alarm me sometimes is that why aren't we depending as much on our nursing fraternity in that regard? And to be fair to our medical colleagues, you know, there's a big drive. If they want an A&P, they'll jump up and down, they'll bang on the table and whatever. But like, I think directors of nursing and midwifery are very well placed to identify what the actual needs are in terms of specific services. Any other comments on that anybody wishes to share?
I suppose since I went to Portlaoise, I suppose I'm there 2.5 years, and I would have been new into CNS post going there. I would have had a lot of experience in diabetes, but as a diabetes nurse, I did have my course, but I wasn't working as a CNS. So going over to Portlaoise, I actually found nurse practice development were so key, like in guiding me what I was doing. And my director of nursing and the aid, I've had a few aid-ons since I went, but like everybody's been very helpful along the way. Because sometimes you can get railroaded into doing things that you probably shouldn't be doing, but you're coming away from your own practice, you're making life easier for somebody else, but you kind of need to have a sounding board to go, should I be doing this or shouldn't I be doing it? But I do think the frameworks that Yvonne was talking about there are quite helpful to guide you in your practice. But definitely I would say nurse practice development has been very, very helpful in anything that I've done. And I suppose, unlike Yvonne, I suppose I came into a candidacy position, so I suppose I was very fortunate. The support structures were already in place. I suppose the post was already approved, and I did have the support and approval, I suppose, of my director of nursing, of the clinical lead, and I suppose of NMPDU, and I suppose they were really, really good in guiding me, I suppose, and keeping, you know, I suppose when you start out you want to do the devil and all, I suppose, but to pull it back and I suppose to focus on the area that is pertinent to your role, I suppose, really and truly.
Well, I have to acknowledge the NMPDUs, in particular, the experience over the last week or so. I was part of the sifting process for the 149 posts. I thought it was a tough task, but our NMPDU colleagues in ONMSD, namely Sheila Cahalane, will be known to everybody, I suppose, in this region, and Carmel Buckley. How they did this in a short period of time was phenomenal work. And Eileen, you were through this process at the last round as well. It is phenomenal work. And I think the support from the NMPDUs are really, really important. Conscious of time, am I okay for another minute or two? Yeah. Again, it's an open question, and it's getting back to the previous conversation around leadership. How real is leadership in your positions?
Very real.
Absolutely, yeah. So Marie, tell us about
I suppose it is very real. I suppose, in fairness, you do have to be or have leadership qualities, I suppose, to be able to bring forward a service, I suppose, and to see what is needed within your service. I suppose I came like that. You talk about leadership and affording opportunities and whatever. I suppose I did my tissue viability back in 2002, 2004, and there wasn't a post available. So I did use other opportunities to learn, to grow and to develop. And I suppose that is what has brought me to today. Like I've been a CNM2, I've acted CNM1. So I've been in lots of other roles that I suppose are leadership roles as well. And I suppose it's about bringing the team. And I suppose like when I do go into work, I try and give my best, and I try and I suppose inspire, I suppose, the younger students as well to, I suppose, want to give their best the day that they go in as well. Do you know what I mean? So that every day is a good day, and I suppose that's what we're culturing and that's what we're developing. And I suppose that's what we want to bring along, so that when they are then the teachers and they are the leaders, that they will be inspiring their students equally as well, you know.
Anybody else on the leadership challenge or role?
Yeah, well, I suppose you're identifying needs for your service every day. You know, you're talking to patients every day, you see what they need, you know, they're concerned about different things. And I think if any, like with COVID, I mean, leaders just jumped out of everywhere from COVID. I know from my experience working in the COVID wards, there was nurses, you know, going into that area with very little, maybe might have been in outpatients for a long time, kind of out of that role. Very quickly we had to adapt, and we did. Like we were challenged so much. You know, we were so innovative with all of we did spirometry, home spirometry kits. We learned quickly how to do that. We got on board with that, you know, trying to continue that service for the patients. And, you know, a lot of, like somebody had mentioned earlier, like there had to be a lot of quick learning very, very quickly. And even the students, like they showed such leadership from that stage, from the students. And like, you know, you were saying, just to keep pushing that, you know, and encourage that. And yeah, definitely, I think I felt I was new in the role at the time, but I felt looking at everybody else, and you know, you had to make your place and just kind of try and make a difference. And, yeah.
I'm watching the clock. We're still within the half hour, but this is a question on my list, and it's about a role of our regulator, NMBI. And the question is, what do you think the NMBI as the professional regulator should focus on over the next 3 years for advanced practice? So I'll ask my panel colleagues to comment, and then I'll hand over to my colleagues from NMBI. That's okay. Is there anything our colleagues from NMBI can do to enable and further enable advanced practice? And I know they've done huge work over the years. It's been spectacular, and we've a model in place that's been the envy internationally, and that was my experience. So is there anything that you would advise our regulator from the point of view of the advanced practice role and where it's going to in the future, and perhaps how they can enable change or support change? Lisa, do you want to take that? Everybody's thinking hard.
You can see my breath. Well, I think, I suppose, obviously, as you said, the support for the advanced practice and the CNS roles has been developed and has been progressive and supportive over the years. I think that's really important to acknowledge, and that's also reflected in the fact that it is something that has been increasing and is going to be increasing, and exponentially as the ministers are supporting it moving forward. And I think that that's really important. And we were talking about embedded. The more advanced practitioners that we have, the more clinical and specialists that we have, the more embedded it will become and integrated within practice. So that those role models will be there. I suppose, just going back to the question, I suppose the registration obviously is key, and as you said, we were in Ireland at the forefront really in relation to that registration piece, and I think that is something that has made it, enabled it to develop really, and I think a lot of other countries now are still catching up with that in relation to it being a requirement for registration. Hopefully that will continue in terms of the other nations.
Good. Any other comments before I hand over to our NMBI partners?
I suppose the NMBI have done so much work in regards to guiding this development of CNS and ANPs, because it's a relatively new post. So we needed a lot of guidance, and they've done so much work on this and so helpful. But I think it's come to a stage now where, because we're quite established in our post, I think the NMBI needs to recognise that our role is evolving continuously. When I started off as an ANP in minor injuries, but we're moving away from that now. We are ANPs and EDs because we're there to expand our role. We want to meet the service needs. So I think the NMBI needs to allow for that fluidity. I remember attending a seminar many years ago. This was about 2 years into my post, and many of you will remember Valerie Small, and she was talking about how we need to be open-minded, we need to expand our role, and we need to move away from this ANP in minor injuries, because we don't want to be caught in this professional cul-de-sac. And that just stuck in my head, and this is where we need to be moving on from, to allow for role expansion within the ANPs.
Right. Okay. So before I hand over to our colleagues from NMBI, will we open that up to the floor for some questions? And while you're heading down, Nassim and Sheila, or Ray and Carolyn, any comments there in that regard?
Yeah, well, I think, that maybe we totally recognise what you're saying. We're beginning to see this now, and that's a good thing for us, because at least ANPs are coming back to challenge us. So we recognise them, especially under what we call our pathway 2. So there was a job, there was a pathway of learning, a portfolio. But now what happens if you want to evolve that portfolio, or even want to change to something different, or we need to change because we need a lot more maybe into the community, or a lot more posts being played all over the place in the community with a different configuration. So we are realising that, and we will be and are able to provide guidance about how that will be recognised. We will be evolving on how the register looks. There'll be annotation in the relatively short term. We have to find mechanisms to do that, which will be other ways to record skills, etc., on people's on the registrant's records. And obviously we'll bring in the confidence scheme, and that's another way to then recognise that you evolve and that you have broader spectrum capacity or different capacity.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you to the panel and Paul. So the question at the back. Yeah, just Yvonne, I think you're dead right in relation to that evolution and the agility that's required within our advanced practice roles. I think what we're seeing now is advanced practice has become the norm. So it's socially acceptable, and within healthcare, people understand the role much more. So it's much more accepted. I think what I can see is the 2018 standards and requirements have brought in the concept of capability over competence. So, like as you said, when you started off, you're very focused on your role and your specifics of getting your clinical care right and to the standards and safety. But as you progress within your career, we want you to evolve. So now there is the option of capability where you can see within your service and within your scope, this is the area that's going to help the patients with that I'm supposed to look after, and this is going to progress them and be more person-centered. So there is that framework now of capability which allows advanced practitioners, once they're ready, to gain extra education and to gain extra skills and experience, so that you can move, within your job description. And I think that's the nice piece, that now within job descriptions, you can evolve your job description with your service provider, with your director of nursing, from that integration piece that Paul was talking about. It's integrating you within your clinical multidisciplinary colleagues, but also within your nursing colleague structure, professional structure, so that, between yourself and the director of nursing, you kind of say, well, actually, within the ED, it's not just minor injuries now that all the people are on trolleys for. It's probably rapid access abdominal assessments or whatever it is. So actually that's the area that if I do more training and get more clinical experience in, I can become competent in and then expand my capabilities. So I think if we kind of use that framework of capability more, we will see better development, better use of the skills that you have, because you are the leaders. Thank you. Mary, you have a question? Oh, sorry.
Do you
want to go ahead, Sheila? Sure, thanks. Okay, thanks very much, Chair, and to the panel. You mentioned, and I think Yvonne, you will agree, we had set up a research community as such way back, pre-COVID, all of that. What can we do as an academic institution? I know Lisa has alluded to it, but we are open for business too. And certainly we have opportunities for you with regards to getting funding and putting in proposals, and we're certainly willing to assist you. But I suppose it's also to recognise, how can we, because as Paul has said, research is so important, the evidence of what you're doing. And so what do we need to do as an academic institution to facilitate that growth and that development, so that at the end of the day, the patient benefits? Because you're doing very good work, you're doing excellent work, but we need to capture that, and we need to have the evidence for a lot of reasons. So how can we bridge that gap and the collaboration that we, and again, it's recognising that you're very busy. When people see you coming on, Yvonne, they say, thank God you're here, because life takes over. So we need to enhance the patient care, but what can we do that would assist you better?
Sorry, my apologies. I suppose being available, even by knowing that you are available, really and truly, you know what I mean? So I suppose there's probably some support you could certainly put in, in gathering the information, or help us to gather the information. I mean, there's certainly ideas that I'd love to expand and explore, and I suppose knowing where to go with them, and I suppose getting the right advice and getting the right guidance. I don't want to be doing something in isolation and then going at the end of it, actually that was a little rubbish, and haven't spent maybe a year or 2 years gathering that. But I suppose getting that expert information and saying, well, no, you actually should look at A, B or C as well, or you should incorporate that. I suppose it's getting all that, the research, getting your expert opinion, as well is very important. I suppose reaching out to the MPs as well, to make them aware that you're open for business at TUS, because I would imagine sometimes as MPs you probably do feel very, I won't say isolated, but especially from a research perspective. You've got great supports in your own areas as regards your nursing support and all that, and your clinical support, but when it comes to research, it's kind of out there on the limb, on the edge the whole time, and it's kind of something that probably every MP wants to embrace, but maybe time. Exactly. Exactly.
And I suppose it's also linking in.
Yes.
I'm not saying I'd have all the answers, but we certainly have a team and different people would, and we are definitely open for business, and it's something that we should look at and try and develop more. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If I may just make a comment, I mean, this is always a challenge, no matter whether you're at advanced practice level or whether you're a director of nursing or whatever. But there's some models out there, and one that we're engaging with at the moment is communities of practice, and it's not rocket science. It's having like-minded people around a table and discussing what can we do, what can we achieve, and maybe Laura has got an interest in cardiology, or Catherine is an academic and has an interest in the emergency care setting. And it's joining up these people. And like I mentioned, this bit of research I'm doing at the moment with Mary Ryder and UCD. A lot of you will probably have experience with Mary through your education and training for advanced practitioner programs. And I'm doing it with Mary because we're like-minded. We've an interest in advanced practice, and it's of benefit to me and our hospital group. It's of benefit to her and the university setting. And it's expanding that community of practice. And it went off the boil, Catherine, as you're aware, during COVID. But look, COVID is with us to stay. So we were reinvigorating that. Did the same in James's. It's a hard slog, and it's tough going. But if you get the like-minded people around the table, that's what's key. And enabling that discussion is absolutely key.
And funding for it as well, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is where we can make a difference, is to allocate and to buy out some time for the aim, to devote to gather this evidence. It's reasonable,
It's not extensive funding, and I mean, Eileen Whelan and I would have used the model whereby we had some funding from the NMPGs to help us get a researcher in, because there's piles of data there, but we're not using it correctly, or we don't know how to interpret it. And having that expertise, and you might have a researcher coming in under the direction of Des or whomever, and that's what's going to drive it, and that'll pull it together very quickly.
So I have 4 people nodding at me, so I go in order. Claire, if you don't mind first.
I think Paul's really answered it already, but I suppose thanks for everything. It's lovely to hear all the feedback on that. But I suppose it's around as well as the finance. It's to protect the time. All of you said, acknowledge how busy you are. And when services are used to having you all the time and that, but someone has to say, okay, give them time out to do this research, and I think it's very important.
Well, I have to say the protected time is not an issue with me, and I've had full encouragement. For me, the finance is going to be a huge issue, because I'm in the process now of applying for a PhD. Well, I have applied for it, and I'm waiting for a scholarship. They told me I will do it. So I think finance is a huge problem. Well, I won't say problem, but it is an issue, and if there is finance, they're available. So don't forget, all the ANPs, we all have masters behind us, and we only need a little nudge to go that little bit further.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, Paul, we were aware of that it had fallen off, that go back in a little bit, and Paul had nudged me last, I suppose just before Christmas, and what was I doing in relation to improving the governance structures around the ANPs. So we established our ANP, candidate ANP forum, only in Q1, but we reached our target, and we're meeting every quarter. So actually we had our first meeting, and Yvonne obviously was there, but there is a hunger and a desire for our colleagues to do research, because I feel that was the one element of the job. When I came into this job and met with Yvonne, this was her big challenge, was around protected time. So we decided that one session a week, because we had a big piece of work to do, was going to be protected for that important work. So on Tuesday, I think it was a Tuesday afternoon, Yvonne was out of the clinical area. And while people would say, where's Yvonne? She was doing a very important part of her work as an ANP. So I suppose, yes, and I supported Yvonne. We had this discussion around her PhD, and I was willing to support the finance. I didn't have access to the finance stream either. So I think we're on the cusp of improving the governance structures, but I suppose we would look to Patrick and NMBI in relation to how we're going to,
I suppose, bring our AMPs to the next level, because I suppose with Des and John, we were speaking around, you know, the PhD programs and how we're going to support it from a clinical perspective. I suppose my vision would be, and I said it to somebody there earlier, is, you know, we need to explore how we're going to have joint positions, you know, joint academic and clinical positions. I think that is a recipe for success, and there is no reason why our advanced nurse practitioners can't be the leaders on this. You know, we're at a very, I suppose, we're at a crossroads, and we're at a pivotal moment to make decisions around the future and the protection of the profession, because we don't want to lose any of these professionals to another service.
But I think you've got, so just embedding that type of joint role is really important, you know, because that would provide both the scaffolding and the support to develop both practice and
Sorry, can I just come in just for 1 second? Just to answer the question, to comment on the piece around the financing. So there's no point in staying, I know, so there's no point in staying quiet in this one. Yeah, I think it's a really important comment, and we know it's within the Department of Health Advanced Practice policy. There is a recommendation there to support advanced practice to our advanced practitioners to level 10. We know that's in place, and our office is certainly going to be looking at that in terms of how we put something in place around that. But the problem is we just can't be supporting advanced practitioners only. We have to have a process that allows all nurses and midwives to be able to access level 10 programs, and we have to be able to do that in an open and transparent way. Now, around the country, different NMPDUs were doing different things over the last number of years and supporting level 10 programs, which was fine, but we never had a unified approach around it. So it's now just trying to put in place. Dr. Jeremy Shaw wants a unified approach that is open and transparent. And certainly the piece around the advanced practice, that'll be the easy piece to solve, but how we include all nurses and midwives that to be able to access that funding stream. That's the bit that we're trying to work out at the moment. So we fully acknowledge that Yvonne and colleagues, and we are working on that. There will be in time, you know. I think one of those things is maybe looking at research priorities as well nationally. And trying to identify nurse and midwifery research priorities at a national level, probably aligned to the ERB recommendations, sponsor care, ECC, and all of that. And maybe aligning funding streams around that for people who want to pursue their level 10 programs. But that is something we're working on at the moment.
Great. Okay.
We're going to charge Patrick per minute that he was talking.
Thanks, Dale.
So, along the way there, I suppose there are two other things that are currently out there in the ether, and that's the HRB funding for exactly what Catherine is now talking about. And colleagues in DCU across the PNIUA sector are currently looking at that in terms of building in that doctorate that's immersed in practice. So as opposed to the whole PhD route, which is what everybody has looked at going forward, it's about embedding that doctorate, but that doctorate of practice there from that research terms. So colleagues in the HRB, there was a SPHERE program previously for health and social care professionals, and that's now been adapted across at least 4 other areas, and colleague in DCU is leading out in this at the moment on behalf of the university sector. I know they've had some conversations with Jared Shaw on this, but it has been very tentative. But it is, I suppose, an alternative pathway that we're looking at, because the HRB traditionally has sponsored, if we think our medical colleagues for MD have sponsored that pathway for a long period of time, and they're now looking at this in the nursing and the health and social care realm. So I think it is to avenues like that that we need to work. You know, I know you from a research term, your advisor here with us on a document in the audience here with us. It really is the pathway to go for that joint piece of initiative. But I also think that we as nurses now have the confidence to actually stand up and say, we are as equally entitled to look towards funding bodies like the HRB, etc., to support our models, which are equally as important that you've just described there when you talked about the communications element and that competency piece. So I would say there are avenues there. We just need to collaborate a little bit more to bring that forward. And I think that's what's important about today. We're learning that there are different ways of doing that.
Thank you. Eileen, you wanted to comment?
Thanks, Laura. I was just going to make a quick comment, just picking up on Mary's point about the finance. Finance is essential, but it shouldn't be an obstacle. And I think just from listening to what Paul has said, what Des has said, it's all about the collaboration. And just picking up on Patrick's point, if a hospital group CEO knows that the NMPDU is funding research year 1 and year 2, and that in year 3 they're going to have to be thinking ahead and boxing off that amount of money, they have 2 years to plan it and they can do it. What they can't do is somebody this year decides they're going to do some research in September, or they're going to do something in a few months' time. And actually, that's where we lose the battle. So I think better forward planning, but better collaboration with those who have the expertise in TUS, with the services, and in PDU giving the seed funding and the hospital groups. And what strengthens that is when you have 2 hospital groups talking to 2 CEOs, you're influencing both. And I see now, you know, since the chief director posts have come into kind of, you know, being strongly established, I see that we're in a much more influential position than we were 7 years ago. So I think the atmosphere is right. And then just a second comment that I would make, and I'll ask the panel questions, you know, in relation to what data or what evidence would you, you know, prove to, or use to prove that you're doing a good job. Now, I hugely value the work that CNSs and AMPs do, but I actually think you're not strongly represented enough in relation to evidence in the board table. And I would say you're not represented at all. Whereas the work that, you know, the consultant does is evidenced by the HYPE data, by the case mix data, it follows funding. At the board table, you're seeing waiting lists and you're seeing the impact various different clinicians have on waiting lists. And the evidence you gave about patient satisfaction is absolutely brilliant. But I think you could think about what other impact are you having? And if you were showing that impact, you actually open up funding streams because the atmosphere is wrong.
And I suppose HYPE doesn't always capture the data. It doesn't capture the data of CNS or AMPs unless it's on IPINs as in a direct clinic. It doesn't see, I suppose, indirect care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does for the
Correct, it does, yes.
So therefore, their workload
it's captured.
Yeah. But often your workload is only seen at the level of the department, or the level of the patients who individually acknowledge it. And I think there's opportunities for you to do that.
If I may respond to that, Eileen, thank you very much. But I think also, as Paul has said, it's the community of practice. And that's the community. That is the secret as well. Like-minded, coming together and overcoming the obstacles. But I suppose it's also about making that pathway a little bit easier. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just conscious of that time, and I know Sheila has to speak to us yet, and I'm very aware that our panel didn't get the same round of applause that the first
Okay, Laura, thank you very much. I'm not going to delay you much further because, you know, the whole point of these events are for us to converse, and, you know, this is great evidence last night. So it's not really, you know, where any of these journeys take us on this evening. It's the fact that we've all been together and there is common understanding, there, like even just that last round of conversation, so interesting, things can be solved. Things can be moved forward without any extra funding, just with a bit more connectivity. And that's really, you know, what these were about. It was just, we expected everyone to be different. This has been different in some ways to our Cork event, but, you know, equally as enriching. I suppose I wrote down loads of things, but one of the things I thought the sort of statement for the night is leaders jumped out of everywhere. I thought that was a great thing to say because you know, we saw it in COVID. Everybody was so overwhelmed by the leadership that was shown in the nursing and midwifery professions, that, you know, the care that was provided, and as you say, even from the students up, people that weren't really expected to be able to show that level of leadership, and it was shown. And I think, you know, people have said, I think even Eileen has said it to me, if we could, you know, allow that to continue some way, that sort of sense of crisis. And, you know, some of the red tape that was there and has probably been semi-reinstated at least does inhibit that, or does inhibit that rapid decision making. But it is there, obviously, you know, people that have been inhibited by the red tape for generations have basically were allowed to be free to make those quick decisions and make them based on the least worst option in a scenario when you're faced with lots of different variables. Made those calls, had the courage, wrote down, you know, in those earlier workshop here, the panel, the three things I thought were care, challenge, and courage came out. That, you know, and that's not just care about the patient, that's care about your colleagues, care about your staff. I mean, that's just, you know, so if we're looking at the leaders and how you demonstrate leadership, I thought some of those points you were making was just unbelievable about how you have to encourage and care, and you have to challenge people to be, you know, mentor them into getting beyond where they are now, give them the next step. And then the courage, you know, of, you know, seeing in people what they have and then pushing them to be the best they can be, as well as yourselves, because it's, and as well as dealing with those patients in those scenarios. So, so what lies ahead for us? Well, most of the things that you said, basically we just have to just do now. So, you know, I mean, the question was, Paul, thank you for that, what will we do for the next 3 years? So we do have to do things for the next 3 years. We do, under our statute, have to create a strategy document, a statement of strategy it's called, and we have been consulting about that, and this is why we're on the road. We want to hear, as well as talking to the very key stakeholders like Group Dons and the NMBI and all of the normal suspects, we do want to talk to registrants in the divisions to hear what you need from us and what we need to do, and you know, channel that back where we can into the expert review. As I keep saying, we gave lots of evidence to the expert review. Ray was the secretary, he took it all down, he put it all in the report, and then I made him come work for me. So all those things are now in it for us to implement, and that is about looking at the curricular content of the undergraduate programs. Are they fit for purpose? Are they, well, they're probably, you know, totally probably fit for purpose now, but are they fit for the nurse for the future? Is the configuration fit for the nurse for the future? Do we need more types of dual registration from the word go? You know, we have evolving healthcare profiles and new cohorts moving through all the time. So how do we make sure that we are quickly and agilely keeping up with that? And then it's about the feeder system in. So we need to get more nurses in, we need to get more training, more capacity, we need to lobby for that, to get money in, and we need to then have the capacity. So that's another big problem, of course. So where do we find the clinical capacity? Now, we've done some work on that, but I'm leaving that up to Asine now going forward. When she moves out of her presidency role, she is in the CHO, so it's about all the community, isn't it, Asine? So it's about making sure that the community placements are opened up, and we do have to, and I know allocations is here tonight, so we have to look at how we can place those people and students in the community and give them really, really good insight into what it'll be like to work in different types of settings, more like lone working in people's houses, a different type of, and we covered that a lot last week with the children's because they are doing that a lot anyway at the minute. So it's all of those things. And then of course, back to Ray, the register. We need many, many more nurses coming from overseas, as well as the ones we can bring through from the training programs and education programs. So that needs to be a very slick machine in the future. We need to probably put through, we're maybe targeting 6,000 registrants on for the first time this year. For those of you that are in management, we have, last year we had issued about 2,500 decision letters, which would allow newcomer nurses to be going on the adaptation programme. Today, I think we have about 2,400 issued this year already. So we will be releasing a lot more nurses into the system through our process, but that needs to be maintained. So that's a big, big programme of work. In the meantime, with the union breaking down the back of our neck about healthcare assistant courses, etc., so we need to look at all of that. So there's lots of work to be done, and we are going to be consulting. So please, please feel free to contribute to that. Tell us what you want us to do, because we are open to be told and to reconfigure how we do things and how we focus. We just talked this morning about the careers. We do get 200,000 from the NMSD for us to promote careers of the nurses and midwives in the profession. So we need to think more imaginatively how to do that, because there's been a drop off this year in application levels, which is disappointing, but probably post-pandemic sort of trauma. So we need to think, how do we encourage people to be interested in the nurse and midwifery profession, and how probably do we need to bring in slightly different cohorts of people, not just through the very, very competitive CIO system, because it is off-putting for some people, and you've seen all of them around the room. So look, there's a huge range of things for us to do. We have a statutory responsibility to do a lot of those, and we'll have to keep doing them, but we can do them in a different way, in a smarter way, and a more efficient way. So please contribute to our consultation. Now there's one person I want to thank, and she's sitting up at the top right hand corner of the room, and that is Dee. Stand up, Dee. So Dee organised all of these work roadshows really with a lot of help from other people, but she really was the main catalyst for them all. So thank you very much, Dee, for all your hard work. Okay, so listen, I'm just going to bring the evening to a close. There's certainly many more opportunity for conversation if you want on the perimeter. But so to allow you to maybe get your phone from being any more numb, I'm just going to call the formal proceedings to a close. Dave, do you want to go back?
Can I just say, and I haven't been standing down the end of this room for a little while. It's great to see people in person, first of all. On behalf of the department here, I'd like to thank Sheila, Asine, and the entire group from NMBI. There's a body of about 10 people that we've been dealing with, and I know you mentioned Dee. She's kept us on our toes for the last number of weeks. Okay. But thank you very much, because it brought this to fruition here. I also want to acknowledge the input that has come across the hospital groups. I'm thinking of Eileen Whelan, who's on annual leave this week, who we twisted her arm to come in here. I know, Paul, you changed a venue today to accommodate us, and I know since 2 o'clock today you've been working away on meetings upstairs. But we also want to acknowledge the input from each of the hospitals here locally and the wider collaborative group. And I'm looking around there at Catherine, Denise, I see Fiona up there someplace across Portlaoise, Tullamore, Mullingar, where people readily came together, and there's been planning and meetings, I think, since about the 8th of April at putting this together. I want to say thank you to all of those groups. To the wider collective group within the local joint working group, that has been a piece of work. You know, we've been mentioning to and fro. The other piece we're also going to say is, and I'm looking at Patrick Lack in there, and you know, he has a checkbook. He's bringing us all to the pub afterwards. But I want to acknowledge the team here in the department, okay? So I'm looking at Mary, I'm looking at Laura, Lisa's been there, and the wider team that have been here collective. Anne-Marie, we've learned that new word from Greg Harkin, the comms person who's putting everything together. Nathan, our photographer. But on the basis of that, we're also going to welcome NMBI back here in person, I believe. Can I say to you, Caroline has confirmed that for us, the 29th and 30th of November. No pressure at all, but in a different way. But I think what we've learned out of this is that collaborative nature that we're here, because at the end of all of this, what I did hear, and I heard it about 10 times, was person-centered. And whether that be with the student or whether that be with a colleague, one thing that we've learned coming out of COVID is to be compassionate to each other. And in working in, I suppose, clinical areas, whatever area, we've had to learn that. So again, I'm not going to talk on, just to say thank you to everybody. I think the panels who were, I'm sure there was arms twisted there from Fiona and Denise to get colleagues to come in here, but it's great to see people in person as well. So thank you very much to everybody, and good night.